In this lecture video, we will be talking about the modern ethical issues in law enforcement. There are actually 5 modern ethical issues in law enforcement, wherein it involves the officers of line duty life or off-duty life, upholding the law and your rights, using necessary force, acting impartially, and profiling. Police ethics encompasses moral values and professional standards in law enforcement. Ethical values in policing includes allegiance, honesty, loyalty, and courage. The Law Enforcement Ethics Code was written in 1957 and requires adherence by those individuals upholding the law. Okay? First, let's talk about the off-duty life of the police officers. Police officers are held to an extremely high standard that requires their personal lives to reflect the integrity of their position. They must maintain a professional image at all things because they are under constant public scrutiny that relies on the public's trust to maintain their power position. So, while most jobs end when the individual clocks out, for example, tapos na oras ng trabaho nila, well, policemen are faced with the ethical issues pa rin of maintaining their level of social respect and adherence still to the law every moment, even if it's their off-duty. Yan. This offense puts them in direct conflict with society. That doesn't mean that if you are an off-duty, you will no longer going to abide what should be followed by the police officer's conduct and ethics, especially those that have little respect for the law or the badge. Okay? It's very siguro unbelievable or hindi tamang you're just gonna enforce the law when you're duty. So at all times it must be um, performed. Police officers are held again to a high standard in their personal lives to reflect the integrity, ito pinaka-importante integrity of their professional position. In law enforcement kasi, sa personnel, referring to the personnel, are under constant scrutiny. Palagi yan, constant. Okay, that's why it's a must that at all times, hindi lang magiging snappy during their duties, kailangan kahit naka-off duty, ganun pa rin. Kahit off duty ka, that doesn't mean you're not gonna act as police officers. Hindi pwedeng, just try to look at the picture that I've showed you, that I included here in this video. And I think everyone is familiar with that man who killed the mother and then the son. Okay? Therefore, even when they are not working, they must maintain a high level of ethical and socially acceptable behavior. They even actually must strictly abide the law even after their work day ends. Officers must lead by example on and off duty. That's the very essence of it. Law and the citizens' rights. Each officer swears an oath to uphold the law and to defend an individual's constitutional rights. One of the ethical issues that an officer faces daily is the ability to uphold these oaths when they are seemingly contradictory. Now, one of the biggest contradictions kasi that can be found in the present government, drug wars, which force police officers to act in the best interest of the state rather than the individual. For example, when someone is caught using or peddling illegal drugs, they could be arrested or shot to death because they are non-laban. For example, quotation, to the arresting police officers. A cop sometimes cannot consider the right to life and liberty issues because they are under instruction to put an end to the drug menace at all costs. Palaging, it's always the police officer's duty to uphold the citizens' rights What are the simple examples of the citizens' right, the right to life, liberty? But there are situations like the examples that I've mentioned just earlier, no? That when police officers caught someone or a group of people using illegal drugs, there could be an instance that that their lives, or they can be arrested or shot to death because of situations like, for example, a quotation ng laban. Okay? So long as hindi, trabaho pa rin ng pulis yan to uphold the law and the citizens' rights. Force. All police officers have the authority to use necessary force to uphold the law, but in some cases, their use of force is unjustified. Meron yan eh. Okay? There are so many examples like upholding or use of force which are unjustified. With this ethical issue, cops face each day can and does put their lives in danger when dealing with those individuals that are non-compliant. Non-compliant like yun na nga, yung nanlaban kanina. Yung example na binigay ko. Okay? Um, in the majority cases, an officer must make a split-second decision. Ibig sabihin, madali ang desisyon on what level of force is necessary, and a misjudgment could result in injury or death for the officer. Decision making is very, very vital in this kind of situations. Research about obedience to authority proved that a person's perception of losing his freedoms would provoke him to react, and officers can easily be coerced in high-stress environments to use unnecessary force. Again, please do not forget what I have mentioned during our first meeting, that when you become a man in uniform, a police personnel, it's always a must to practice maximum tolerance. Process should always be correct when dealing with certain situations like arresting, yan. Why isang issue ang necessary force modern issue? Kasi nga, as what I've said kanina, to uphold the law, but in some cases, their use of force is unjustified. Try to look at the picture. I know everybody or every one of you listening right now, no, are familiar with this situation that had happened in other country, no, necessary force. In that situation, no, the Black Lives Matter movement highlights society's widespread concern over the use of excessive force by police officers. Namatay yan eh. Namatay yung black uh, person na yan eh. Failing to act quickly or acting too swiftly and escalating a situation at hand are real possibilities and can place the officer and civilian at risk of danger. Therefore, law enforcement must have sharp critical thinking skills. When questioning a police officer's ethics, we question their decision-making skills. When an officer's professional decision-making is challenged, the perception of diminished integrity and lack of trust and respect for our police are at risk also. Okay? Impartially. One of the ethical issues officers are faced with is the requirement to act impartially. This idealistic type of oath causes a hoist to act impartially, especially for local officers that handle the same crowds of people throughout their career. Okay, now, a real world example of this would be an officer that knows where the drug lord houses are but has no court acceptable evidence to pursue the case. Yan. The officer is expected to follow law enforcement ethics, but he is also limited in his authority to uphold the law by following certain procedures. He therefore sometimes resort to unethical ways to arrest the drug lords. Okay? Again, our topic here are modern ethical issues in law enforcement. Here's the scenario. Yung sa example na binigay ko. Police officers, alam niya kung nasaan ang drug lords. But then, it still has no court law enforcement, I mean no court acceptable evidence, so wala pang, to make the long story short, wala pang go signal to make an operation relating to it. So sometimes police officers are resorting to unethical ways to arrest the drug lords. Kasi sometimes, no matter how we already know, no matter how the police office already know who are the perpetrators are. It's just that there are um, procedures that has to be followed first, no? Kaya nga sa acting impartially is one of the ethical issue, the modern issue in law enforcement. Dito kasi, officers may be limited in their ability to uphold the law by following specific procedures. Napaka-importante kasi ng procedures in doing their jobs because police officers are avoiding administrative issues, administrative sanctions, administrative cases. Yan. They are limited by the law by following specific procedures. Another example for this. An officer is aware of domestic violence, but again has no court acceptable evidence to pursue the case. In addition, officers who work and live in small towns and frequently deal with the same people make it a challenge to be impartial. Lalong-lalo na, for example, if kakilala mo yung ah, nakakaranas ng domestic violence. Actually, that's what's happening in movie that we watches on TV, 'di ba? Yung mga nagpapakahiro ng mga um, police officers. Kaya sometimes an officer may struggle when they are forced to act in the best interest of the state rather than an individual and make an arrest for minor act that could result in imprisonment, fines, even job loss. Maraming cases din, no? Ang mga nadi-dismiss because of acting impartially and a damaged social reputation or more. Yan.